everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome High Representative Vice President Federica Mogherini and Commissioner for Transport Violeta Bulc in the press room today to present the joint communication on connecting Europe and Asia that was just adopted. They will both make brief presentations, and then we'll take a couple of questions on this issue specifically, since time is limited. Later on in the afternoon, we will have a technical briefing for further details in case you will have more questions, and there is a very comprehensive pack, press pack also available. Following this, Alexander will address other issues from the college agenda, so we really keep this on connectivity today. With this, I give the floor to High Representative.
Thank you, Maya. I'm very pleased to be here today together with Violeta to present our vision that we presented today in college, how to better connect Europe and Asia. And let me say from the beginning, I was just last week in Strasbourg in the European Parliament plenary discussing our relations with China. It immediately came up how relevant it is, and it must be our work on connectivity from a European perspective. Because we are, as Europeans, very fortunate to live in a highly connected European Union. Our internal market, free movement of people, mutual recognition of qualifications, energy union, free roaming, all these connections have created opportunities for European Union citizens, businesses and investors, and contributed to a better standard of living across Europe. These connections, these benefits have been achieved through the European way. So today we have adopted our proposal on how to bring the European way to connectivity in our work to implement, to increase connectivity between Europe and Asia. And it is based on three main principles, three main blocks: sustainability, a comprehensive approach, and a rules-based approach. First, on sustainability. We believe that connectivity can work only if it's sustainable, from an economic, from a fiscal, from an environmental, from a social point of view. Second, connectivity must be comprehensive, which means that it must focus on all different aspects, from transport, which is obviously the key, but also including digital, energy, and human dimensions. Third, connectivity must be established according to international rules and regulations, which are crucial for goods, services, capital, and people to move efficiently and fairly. And this, I would say, is specifically the European way of moving forward on this point, as well as on others. Today, together with Violeta, as well as with other members of the college, we have set out how this European Union approach to sustainable connectivity can be expanded specifically in and towards the region with the biggest demand for infrastructure and the region with the highest predicted growth in the world, which is Asia. And to do it in a way that will be beneficial both for us, in Europe, in Asia, and also for the entire planet. We will do this in three ways. First, we will build new connections and networks between Europe and Asia. We'll do this through transport networks, and I will leave this to Violeta in a moment. We will also build digital and energy networks, and we will continue to promote human exchanges and mobility as a way to build connections, to facilitate mutual understanding, and to share ideas. This is, at the end of the day, the basis of connections between Europe and Asia since thousands of years. Secondly, we need to build and strengthen partnerships for a common approach to connectivity. Many of these partnerships already exist. With China, for example, we have a bilateral connectivity platform where we meet to discuss synergies, but also to discuss the different points of view we might have. On the regional level, we work together with ASEAN, and this shows, for example, that this cooperative approach, also on connectivity, works and brings results that are good for us and are good for them and for the rest of the region. And at the international level, you know well that the European Union is at the heart of global cooperation and the strongest supporter of multilateralism and of the international rules-based global architecture. And once again, in a few days from now, in New York at the General Assembly, we'll have the opportunity to do so on different aspects far beyond connectivity. Connectivity cannot be confined to regional pockets, cannot exclude legitimate actors and put environmental considerations last. We need common standards, we need common rules, and for this reason, the European Union is working with international and European standardization organizations, the International Energy Agency, the World Trade Organization, and other key organizations with a global mandate. Finally, we have looked at how to leverage sustainable investments for connectivity projects. Asia is estimated to need around 1.3 trillion euros per year for infrastructure investments. That's a huge amount of money. If we can support them, the opportunities for the European companies are clearly there. The European Union has, over recent years, developed innovative and sustainable ways of leveraging finance for investment. Just think of the Juncker Plan, but also through regional investment facilities. And in the next multi-annual financial framework, you know that the Commission has proposed to increase the European Union external action budget to 123 billion euros for the period 21-27, which is an increase of 30% compared to this current period. And included in this proposal, there is an investment framework for external action with 60 billion euros in guarantees for external investment. So connectivity in and with Asia would stand to benefit enormously from these proposals that are now going to be discussed by the Council and the Parliament. And I'm sure that if the decision will be confirmed in that direction, we will have 3 or 4 times more of the European Union investments compared to today as a result of this increase. So I'll finish here. It is something big. It is something consistent with our overall global approach. It is something that could be good not only for our people but also for our businesses. I know that our friends, not only in Europe but also in Asia, are very much looking forward to start working on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Bulc.
Thank you very much. Connectivity matters, and that was very clearly stated also in this paper that is today in front of us. Connectivity is key for economic development, through trade and business opportunity, for social development, and of course for preserving our planet if we do it right. But above all, it brings people together, and I think this is a very clear message from our communication today. The EU and Asia have an interest in developing efficient, economically viable and environmentally sustainable trade routes and corridors between the two continents. Today, 70% of all trade goes by sea. Over 25% goes via air, while rail remains a very marginal in this story. The potential for growth is therefore substantial. That is why we want to develop transport, energy and digital links between EU and Asia in the forum of the 3 priorities that Federica already mentioned: sustainable connectivity, comprehensive connectivity, international rule-based connectivity, and everything in the multilateral spirit. The EU has a rich experience with building cross-border and multinational networks. For example, the European Transport Network, also known as a TEN-T, has a clear legal framework based on corridors across the EU. It is supported by financial tools with a focus on cross-border connectivity and very clear standards. For this purpose, we are ready to engage with Asia, with Asian partners, and share our successful experiences towards an even closer engagement. We have extended the TEN-T maps to Western Balkans 2 years ago, and now this is an incredible element of our Transport Community Treaty. We agreed the TEN-T extension to Eastern Partnership in our Eastern neighborhood. We are cooperating with Turkey really well, and I'm glad that we have a high-level transport dialogue within which we coordinate our joint infrastructure plans. We aim to develop this multilateral engagement further towards Asia in partnership with other Asian countries, for example, with ASEAN, Japan, and China, as well as India. We have also established an EU-China connectivity platform and have been engaging with them since 2016. We agreed with China to make a study on the railways corridors involving also the transit countries and based on a level playing field, where multilateral approach has been honored. Furthermore, in aviation and maritime sectors, we pursue agreements with ASEAN countries to promote win-win market access, for example, through the negotiations of unprecedented block-to-block agreement in aviation. We're also partnering with ASEAN countries to negotiate international agreements to decarbonize the sector. And I have to say, we are successfully engaging with them through the UN-based international institutions. Last but not least, we are also committed to provide financing to support connectivity investments using our successful tools such as Connecting Europe Facility, better known as CEF, and the Investment Plan for Europe. We're also successfully deploying the external investment plan to support investments in partnership with international financial institutions like World Bank, EBRD, and EIB, based on EU guarantee and risk sharing. We have proposed to reinforce these instruments in 2021-27 financial period as well. As you can see, we have been engaging seriously with our Asian partners for the last 4 years, and I'm really pleased that we now have a very clear strategic framework within we can continue our strategic engagements. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The floor is now yours. Please introduce yourself and the media you're working for before you ask your question. I see Georgi raising a hand.
Thank you, Maya. Georgi Gotov, you're active. Vice President, I would like to know how much this is going to be the highlight of the upcoming ASEAN summit, and is this the response to the Chinese Road and Belt or New Silk Road initiative, and what's the difference? You mentioned international rule-based. Does it mean that you don't see Road and Belt and Road as international rule-based? Yeah, I'll stop here. Thank you.
This communication indeed will be at the center of the work we'll do during the month of October. It will be a very Asia-oriented month because, as you said, we will host here in Brussels the Asia-Europe Meeting Summit on the 18th and 19th of October, and I believe that before that the foreign ministers will agree on this strategy at the next Foreign Affairs Council. And I can tell you that already in my last meetings with most of the Asian partners during the last 3-4 months, over the summer in particular, I've started to discuss the content of this strategy with our partners in Asia, starting with China, but not only them. I'm talking about India, I'm talking about ASEAN countries, many that are interested in looking at the European way to improve connectivity and increase connectivity between Asia and Europe. Coming to the second part of your question, I think I partially responded when I mentioned China among the interlocutors with whom we have started to discuss this strategy even before presenting it. Our approach is confident enough, I would say, not to measure our proposals as reactions to others. There might be differences, there might be points in common. For sure, we share the same approach in the identification of the need and the priority. We both share with China the strategic relevance and the will to increase connectivity between Europe and Asia. There might be also differences. Indeed, we believe that any investment in increasing connectivity has to be based on international rules and regulations that are, for us, a guarantee that things are done properly, that players have the same opportunities, that communities benefit from the projects. This is another aspect that characterizes the European approach to connectivity, and that I've discussed a lot, in particular with Central Asian partners, but also with others. Our projects will aim at creating also jobs and economic growth and benefits for the local communities. Our approach is this, and we believe this is sustainable and good for us, and also for the societies and the economies of the countries where our companies operate. I would not say myself if this is different from others' proposal, but this is our proposal. And again, it's not a response, but for sure it's a common need we see. It's a common priority we identify. And there are, I believe, points of contact on which we can work very well. And there are, as usual, also differences in the approach, but this is natural.
Robin?
Thanks, Maya. Hi, Rep. The Belt and Road Initiative was put forward in 2013. So why are you coming forward with this proposal now, towards the end of the Commission and almost 6 years after China? Thank you.
Our proposals, our policies, and our calendar is not determined elsewhere. We come with a proposal when we see the proposal is ready, when we have good ideas and we have resources to put on it, when we see things as a priority for us, and I think Violeta explained perfectly well why this is interesting for Europe today. And again, as it is not a reaction in negative terms to another initiative, it is not a reaction in positive terms to another initiative. I will never be tired of saying and explaining the calendar of our decisions, the statements we do, the strategies we put forward, the consensus we create inside the European Union is not based on calendars determined elsewhere. Being it in Beijing, being it in Washington, being it in Moscow, being it in Timbuktu, you name it. We define European policies on the basis of what is in the best interest of Europeans. Most of the times, this coincides also with the interests of the rest of the world, especially today. So there's no link with the calendar or with the timeline of others. There is an interest we identify as Europeans to work together as Europeans now on this, and putting at the disposal also of our private sector the financial resources to support their work in this field. Also because we have been fostering in this last couple of years, as you might have noticed, an external, not only the external investment plan, but what we would call the economic diplomacy in an incredible manner that was not there before. So I would say that this is also part of our increased work to support European investments and the economic presence of the European players in other parts of the world. Also because we see there is a demand for that. Again, let me mention, sorry, I'm long, but I'll close here. Let me mention the fact that in some of my talks, again, in particular in Central Asia, I clearly saw, for the first time probably, the need and the demand for not only economic investments, but for quality standards in the investments. Projects that can create infrastructures that are not just cheap and affordable, but also that can resist the test of time, that connect with the European standards of quality. And this is something that probably the demand for that was not there before, or the interest for that was not there before so much on the European side. And this is the result, I believe, of a good work that has been done, including by Commissioner Bulc, on developing the European stand and presence in the global transport environment in the world globally.
Okay, I see two more questions. I'll ask you to be really short, and I'll take both, and then we conclude. I'll start with you, and then I move to you. Please, go ahead.
Good morning. I Representative Emanuele Bonini, News Italy. I have a question on migration, if I may, because African Union officially asked Mr. Salvini to apologize for his statement on African migrants and slavery. So, since you have been working African Union to find a good cooperation mood for this migration phenomenon. Are you concerned about the possibilities of sort of diplomatic crisis, since Italy is one of the EU member states? Thank you.
I would say that here today we discuss about connectivity between Europe and Asia. I'll fly to Salzburg tonight, and there we'll discuss about other things related to migration.
One more question over there.
Werner Balzen, Deutsche Verkehrszeitung. I understand that you will take this connectivity model to Asia. This provokes the question, what happens if Asia doesn't have any interest in the European way to see things? Thank you.
For what I see up to now, there's a lot of interest. In the last couple of months, I've been traveling to Asia. I've been having, I guess, some 20 bilateral meetings, I check, with my Asian counterparts, different countries, including regional organizations, I think of ASEAN. And there is a lot of demand and interest in having the European way to connectivity in the continent, not only in the continent, but also with the continent and with what is in between Europe and Asia. So the demand is there, the interest is there. Obviously, we will need to discuss the details. And once this proposal is now on the table, this will be obviously done. And again, on the transport aspects, this is not a job for me, but more for Violeta, as well as there are other aspects of the proposal. I mentioned digital, I mentioned energy that are of the competence of other commissioners. We will do this comprehensive approach now in practical terms. And as I said, October will be a month where we'll start, a few weeks from now, a month exactly from now with the ASEM summit. I'm sure that connectivity will feature as the top priority for our common agenda. So this is also in preparation for the ASEM summit. And I can tell you, for the time being, the interest we are seeing from all our Asian partners, and I stress all our Asian partners, is very high. Commissioner?
Maybe I can just add one additional argument. I mean, global trade is growing. More and more every country is realizing that in order to really engage either for trade, other economical reasons, or even on a social engagement, you need connectivity in the sense of transport. And I can see a really growing interest from Asia to connect better with EU. I explained before, we've been connected only by sea and by air so far, and some very limited capacity in railways. However, if the industry try to cooperate, if we want to really get export and import going, we really need to get common standards. We need to have common alignments of regulatory rules. And we started at the beginning of the mandate discussions with our Asian partners. And now things are evolving, accumulating, and it was a really perfect timing now to come up with the overall chapeau communication from the Commission as well. That doesn't mean that we are conflicting or competing, like Federica said, with anybody, but EU needs its own story with which we can engage now in an even more coordinated and strategic manner.
I'll take one final question from Philippe.
Merci. En français, si je peux, une question pour la haute représentante. Quelle serait votre, et c'est une question peut-être un peu plus, disons, politique dans le climat actuel, quel serait votre message à tous ceux qui aujourd'hui sont bombardés de messages par des politiciens populistes, extrémistes de tous bords, et qui pourraient être sensibles à l'argument que voilà, avec cette connectivité, un nouveau danger de la mondialisation, et demain on sera submergé en Europe, puisque la connectivité, ça va dans les deux sens, par le péril chinois, asiatique, etc. Quel serait votre message à cette tendance populiste de qualifier la mondialisation? Merci.
Pensez à l'impact économique de la connectivité. Je pense que ça suffirait, surtout pour certains qui sont peut-être plus sensibles à ces types d'arguments, en laissant de côté les côtés plus humanistes des arguments. Mais ça suffit de penser à l'impact sur nos économies, sur notre commerce, sur nos investissements. Le travail qui peut être fait par les entreprises européennes dans le secteur de la connectivité en Asie, c'est énorme. Donc je pense que ça, c'est l'argument peut-être plus fort pour certains milieux de l'opinion publique européenne qui peuvent être plus exposés à ce type de discours. Mais je voudrais aussi ajouter, la connectivité n'est pas seulement économie, et aussi des autres parties de l'économie, comme le tourisme, qui bénéficie beaucoup l'Europe en termes de connectivité avec l'Asie. N'oublions pas que l'Asie est un marché énorme en développement. J'ai cité les données, le fait que c'est le continent avec la on dit comment en français, la projection, la prévision de croissance économique la plus haute de la planète. Donc, être bien connecté avec l'Asie est un intérêt économique pour l'Europe. Et puis, bien sûr, je vais ajouter l'aspect, je dirais, humain, culturel, social. Depuis le début de l'histoire, si on arrive à définir quel est le début de l'histoire, l'Europe et l'Asie ont été connectées. Et ça a toujours amélioré notre niveau de vie, notre niveau de connaissances, notre niveau culturel, même notre niveau de spiritualité, si je peux toucher aussi des aspects qui normalement n'entrent pas dans ces salles de presse. C'est un élément d'enrichissement humain qui ne peut pas être sous-estimé, je pense. Et encore une fois, sur les migrations, on va en discuter dans des autres contextes, mais le lien connectivité-migration, je pense que c'est un peu forcé.
With this, I'll conclude this presentation. Please, I'll hand over the floor now to Alexander, and immediately after we proceed with the technical briefing on this same connectivity strategy. Thank you very much.